Hi guys, welcome to Make a Wax Carved Ring. I'm Sophie and I'm a jewellery designer maker. I have my own brand called Anvil and Ivy Jewellery, and I also split my time between teaching at the London Jewellery School in Hatton Garden and also my own studio. So today we're going to be making a wax carved ring using a variety of different wax carving tools. So the first thing that we are going to be using today is our blue piece of jeweller's wax. This is a pre-cut piece of wax ready to get started creating. They do come in larger tubes, so if you are interested in carrying on making, this is something that you would be able to purchase from good jewellery suppliers. The other thing that we're going to be needing today is a black Sharpie, mainly because it shows up very well on the blue colour of the wax. The other thing that we need is a double-ended wax file. So the double-ended wax file has two sides. It's a coarser side on one side and a slightly finer side on the other, and this is quite useful for carving shapes, and especially when you start to get sort of a little bit closer to your final design rather than taking off too much wax. Another thing that we may use today is a scalpel. We are all adults here, I hope so. So please be aware that the scalpel is sharp. You can purchase these from any jewellery supplier. These obviously are a blade, so just be aware when you're using them that you're not going to be kind of pointing them towards yourself, as they are sharp and they can cut you. Another thing that we're going to use is our wax ring reamer. So the wax ring reamer has a blade on one side, and essentially we're going to be using this to round off on the inside and take out wax in order to make the size a little bit bigger. So here are some examples of what we could potentially make on our workshop today. Generally, what I would say is that a geometric or an organic shape works out a little bit better. I want you all to be able to make something that you'll actually wear. So keep it nice and simple. Try not to make anything too chunky, and make sure that you actually think about the design that you're going to do before you get started. So first things first, we need to get our wax piece to the correct ring size. We're going to use our wax ring reamer to ream out the inside of our hole in our wax piece until it's the correct size for our finger. First thing that we must do is choose which finger we actually want it to be on, and that is one of the most difficult decisions of the whole day. So what I recommend is that you don't force the reamer in too far. You push it in a little bit and start to turn it towards yourself. I recommend holding the wax still and turning the reamer, and you'll start to see small little blue slithers of wax coming away, and that's when you know that you're doing the right thing. Once you've done a little while on one side, turn the ring over to the other side and go again from this side. We're basically trying to avoid having a tapered ring on one side. We want to do everything really evenly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the fit on my finger, and at that point I can see that it doesn't fit, so I'm going to just carry on. It won't take too long. It's best not to do too much at one time. You can always take more wax away, but it's very difficult to add wax back. You'd have to start all over again. So I'll try again one more time. And it's still a little bit too tight, so I'm just going to carry on. And there we go. So it fits on my finger, and it spins a little bit, so it's not too tight, and it's fairly easy to get on and off, but I know that that would feel quite comfortable. I'm just going to clear away some of this wax. So the next step that we need to think about is our design. I generally recommend to have a piece of paper that you can work from. Once we have ring-sized our piece of wax, I generally say that the best method is to actually draw around your piece of wax with a Sharpie or a pen or a pencil. And that way you know exactly how much space you have to design in. So I recommend to do 3 different drawings and 3 different views. One flat on, as if it's laying flat down on a table. one side on, how it's going to look from the side, and one top view, how it will look from the top. This just helps you visualise and choose how to start making your design. So I'm just going to go ahead and start to draw something inside the shape. And I've just gone for something fairly geometric and simple. From the side views, I'm not going to think about that at this stage. I'm going to work on my front view. I'm going to get my ring looking like that shape. So I need to remove the extra wax around my shape, or this coloured part. So that it leaves behind the outside silhouette of my design. So, first things first, I need to transfer my design onto my piece of wax. So I'll have my design here for reference, and I'm going to use my Sharpie to actually draw my design onto my piece of wax. So I'll start off just sketching my design. You can see the black Sharpie nice and clearly. It stands out from the blue colour. And I'm going to carry on marking out my shape. At this point, if you do make a mistake, you can remove the Sharpie with acetone, so nail varnish remover type liquid, and take it off. So I'm happy with that. I've drawn out my design, and I'm going to start to remove the excess wax around the outside of that black line. There's a number of ways we can do that. We can use our scalpel. A couple of different techniques with the scalpel. We can use it in a cutting motion, so we can actually cut slithers of wax off. Be aware that some may ping off and you might find these for days in your living room or your kitchen. So that's a nice, safe, simple method of taking off the wax. What I would recommend is that you don't try and hack off big lumps of the wax at once. Start by doing small slithers and you'll find your life a little bit easier. Bear in mind that the back of the blade is the more powerful part of the blade. Try not to use the tip because that's a lot more flexible and can often break. So you can use it in a cutting motion. You can also use it in more of a whittling motion. So please be aware that it needs to be going away from your hands. I don't want you cutting in towards your thumb. That's when disasters can happen. So place the blade onto the surface of the wax, and it's almost like peeling a potato. This is where it really will start to flick off, but it does take off quite a lot of wax quite quickly, and it actually leaves behind quite a nice faceted texture. So some people use this as their finishing method, and it does leave a really, really nice faceted silver surface. The other method that we can use with our blade is more of a scraping method. So this is the only time that I'll allow a blade to come towards my finger when it's on an angle. You can really see that I'm applying my blade with a real angle to it so that it's not digging in, it's just scraping gently along. This is really useful for when we're trying to smooth off any edges or take off any corners that we don't want, and it's really nice to actually smooth things off on ring bands and any other details. So you'll start to take off much smaller little curls of wax. It's quite useful to have a cutting mat. It protects any surfaces, especially if you're working from your kitchen counter or a table. And it also just gives you a nice workspace to work from. Try and keep it fairly clean, so whenever you get too much wax dust, just sweep it off to one side. The wax dust doesn't stain, it won't stick to anything, it just needs to be swept up and put in the bin. So, we can also use our double-ended wax file. The double-ended wax file, as I said earlier, has two sides. It has a coarser side and a slightly finer side. When I'm working, I usually use the coarser side to rough out my initial shape and then start to refine my shape with my finer side of the file. So I'm going to start filing off the excess wax around the outside of my black line, and I'm going to start with the coarse side. So it's good practice to just file forwards. rather than doing this, most beginners have a tendency to file back and forwards. You end up filing quite inaccurately, and actually it's a little bit more beneficial for you to actually file in one direction so you know exactly where you're placing your marks. So I'm just going to keep filing all the way round until I'm happy that my outside silhouette of my wax looks exactly like my ring design flat on. So I'm now quite happy with the shape of my ring, and I'm going to start thinking about what I'm going to do from the side view. So I'm going to take my Sharpie again, and I'm just going to have a think about the side design. And I know that I want my ring to taper inwards towards the bottom of the ring band. So I want my ring to start to look a little bit more like this. So I now know that I need to remove this excess wax on the side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my file again, and I'm going to start to file it flat from the bottom. So filing forwards as we did, I'm just going to start to remove some of the weight and the thickness from the bottom of the ring band. Try and do it as evenly as you possibly can, and keep checking how it's looking from the side. And make sure that once you've done some work on one side, you're going to turn it over and do some more work on the other side, and try and bring those ring sides in nice and evenly. So I'm just removing some of the wax from the bottom half of the ring, and I'm aiming to try and taper my ring shank in slightly at the bottom. Just gives it a little bit more interest and just makes the ring a little bit more comfortable to wear. So I'm just filing nice and evenly at the bottom half of the ring, and I'll just keep checking to see how it's looking and if there's any parts that I need to file a little bit more. I can see one area just here, which I'm going to just carry on filing a little bit more. And I don't want anything too drastic, I just want a subtle taper, so I'm just going to keep filing until I'm happy with the shape and the angle. It does help sometimes with all this dust to actually sort of blow the dust away from the piece or rub it off. It does sometimes become a little bit misleading and can trick the eye into thinking that you've got a certain shape when you actually haven't. So just keep wiping that dust away and checking your piece all over. Yeah. So I'm happy now that I have two views, and that ring looks like both of those views. So now that I've got both my two views, my flat and my side view, I'm going to think about what I want to do from the top view. I actually don't want to do very much to the top view because I quite like the fact that it's nice and angular and geometric. But if I did want to maybe put in some design details at this stage, I would then start to think about what I want to do. I'm going to just leave mine blank, but if you did want to do anything, it's worth at this stage just drawing out your design in that box.